A very happy new year to everybody and a very happy World Braille Day. Wherever you are in the world, welcome to this very special event to launch the Global Braille Literacy Campaign brought to you by the ICEVI and the WBU. My name is Matthew Horspool from the Braillists Foundation. It is an absolute pleasure to be joining with ICEVI and WBU to be hosting this event today. We have 210 registrants. Actually, we might have slightly more than 210 now, but at 9:30 UK time this morning when I checked, 210 registrants from 67 countries. Lots of European countries, lots of African countries, a big contingent from India, quite a few from Australia and New Zealand, even some from the US, where it's got to be, 5 o'clock in the morning or even earlier than that. We pick this time because wherever you are in the world, it is still World Braille Day. Maybe only just still World Braille Day, but it's still World Braille Day, the 217th birthday of Louis Braille, and it's so good to have you in this event today. We're going to ask everybody to remain muted during this event unless you are one of the speakers, and we have several of those. We'll go through those as we go through the meeting. We have, for the time being, disabled the chat. We will keep this under advisement as we go through the session. We may open up the chat a little bit during the second half of the session, but certainly during the first half, while there's quite a lot going on, we've kept the chat disabled just so that screen reader users don't get bombarded with notifications. Even if we do turn the chat on, it's very likely there won't be a question and answer session today. So please do sit back and listen and enjoy the conversation as it unfolds. The meeting's being recorded. We'll talk more about that towards the middle of the session and towards the end of the session, but it is being recorded. So if you miss any of this, or if you listen to all of it and you think you've got friends who would like to listen to it, then please do send them to that recording. And a reminder that we do have interpretation available, live spoken interpretation into French and Spanish. This is a first for the Braillists. It is probably not a first for ICEBI or WBU. But if you need to access that interpretation, instructions have been provided in the reminder emails, and there was also a video playing in the waiting room. So hopefully people are able to access that via the interpretation feature inside of Zoom. I'm being supported today by a fantastic team of colleagues. Some of them will get to speak, and we will let them speak in just a few minutes. But there are two colleagues I'd particularly like to thank who don't have the opportunity to speak today. The first one of those is Stuart Lawler. Stuart has been doing some work behind the scenes, helping with some of the technical support for this session, helping to manage the waiting room and things like that. And the other colleague who I'd like to thank is Chantel Griffiths. Chantel has been doing the lion's share of the Zoom setup for this meeting, managing the interpreters, sorting out all of the permissions that we need in order to make this run smoothly. So thank you to Stuart and Chantel for all the work that you've done up until this point, and for all the work that you're going to continue to do in the background that we won't see. But the reason why we won't see it is because the meeting will run so smoothly because of all of that work that you're doing. So now it's time for me to move to our first speaker. This is Frances Gentle from Australia. She's the immediate past president of ICEVI, which is the International Council for the Education of People with Visual Impairments. She's a lecturer with Next Sense Institute and Macquarie University. She is the lead designer of UEB Online, which is a free online Braille training program. And most importantly, for this session, she's the co-chair of the campaign steering group, the steering group for this Global Braille campaign. So, Frances, over to you. Let's hear more about the campaign that we're launching today.
Thanks, Matthew, and a very warm welcome to everyone. Today is a very special day. We're marking World Braille Day, and I'm just checking that everyone can hear me. Yes? Matthew, yes. Everyone's got me? Yep, thank you.
Yep.
All right, so it's the birthday of Louis Braille, and at the same time, we are launching the joint ICEVI World Blind Union Global Braille Literacy Campaign. More Braille, more empowerment. So the campaign builds on the momentum created last year through Braille 200, where people around the world celebrated 200 years of Braille. The vision of the More Braille, More Empowerment campaign is a global commitment to recognizing Braille literacy as a right, not a privilege, empowering touch readers to grow, to dream, and to shape their futures. It is a 2-year global campaign running from today, 4th of January 2026, through to World Braille Day on the 4th of January 2028, providing a sustained period of action, collaboration, learning, and advocacy across regions and sectors. So our goals for the campaign: to promote Braille as a fundamental and lifelong literacy, to expand access to Braille materials in multiple formats and languages, to strengthen Braille teaching and learning from early childhood through to adulthood, and to encourage a wide range of Braille technologies, to share accessible Braille informational resources, and build a research evidence base to inform policy and practice. So to bring this vision and goals into action, the campaign is guided by a global steering committee and implemented through working groups made up of organizations and individuals who are leading the campaign direction and activities in 3 focus areas. So the first focus area is advocacy and media, led by Gladys Correa, Mohammed Iqbal Adrali, and myself. This working group will develop culturally responsible advocacy and media resources. And we thought we would start with the components of the 2026 World Braille theme: education, inclusion, and accessibility. The second focus area is informational resources. And this is led by Susan LaVenture, ICEVI's president, Samuel Fulks, and Awais Alam. The working group will compile and create accessible, multilingual Braille informational resources. And the working group is currently identifying existing resources, and they've actually identified 18 thematic areas so far, which is quite impressive. And the third focus area is research, led by doctors Pravina Sukraj Eli, Virendra Raj Pokharel, and Vimal Kumar Dengla. And this working group is preparing surveys to gather qualitative and quantitative data using multiple access methods to show the educational, social, and lifelong benefits of Braille and to strengthen advocacy with evidence. So you will hear more about the 3 focus areas during our panel discussion. So what are the next steps? So we have in place our governance structure and our monitoring and evaluation framework. We have a terms of reference between ICEVI and World Blind Union. And with today's official launch, the work of the steering committee and the 3 working groups will build momentum as we enter 2026. So some of the working groups are really at the beginning point and some are a bit further advanced. So this is not a campaign owned by ICEVI and World Blind Union. It is a shared effort, shared by blind people, educators, researchers, advocates, partners, sponsors, basically organizations and individuals who are contributing their expertise, their experience, and their time. So today is not just a launch, it's an invitation to recognize Braille as a right, an invitation to strengthen Braille access, teaching, and policy, and an invitation to work together across regions and sectors. And there are simple ways for everyone to be involved. You can light a candle, make a small donation in celebration of Louis Braille's 217th birthday anniversary. You can become a campaign sponsor. You can join a working group in advocacy and media, informational resources, or research. And you can join our mailing list to stay connected and informed. So for more information, you could welcome to email braillecampaign at ICEVI.org, or visit the campaign page on the ICEVI website, ICEVI.org. So I invite you to join us. So thank you, and back to Matthew.
Thank you so much, Francis. And yes, ICEVI.org. Find the Braille campaign there, or Braille campaign at ICEVI.org. We're going to be coming to the panel in just a moment, so get ready, panel. In the meantime, I just want to say a few thank yous, because we always do thank yous at the end and then people drop off. So we thought we'd do them towards the start while people are still engaged. We'd like to thank a number of organisations who have partnered with the campaign. The Brailleist Foundation is one of those, of course, but we also want to thank the International Council on English Braille, ICEB, the DAISY Consortium, the World Intellectual Property Organization, which is the organization for the Accessible Books Consortium, the European Blind Union, Braille Working Group, and the Braille Institute of America. Thank you to all of those organizations for being a partner in the campaign's work. We also want to thank the campaign's sponsors, who are DOT Incorporated, CBM, which is Christian Blind Mission, and they have a particular role to bring the campaign into the lesser economically developed countries, and Humanware. So thank you to those sponsors. We're really pleased that Francis has mentioned the Light a Candle initiative. That initiative has done really well so far. So far, we've raised $2,700 from 122 candles. So that the average donation per candle is about $20 US, $22.14 or so per candle. So we've still got another 95 candles to go. Let's see how much money we can raise with those remaining 95 candles. And let's try and get them. The target is to get them lit by next year. But, you know, if we've managed to do 100 candles in a month, let's see if we can get them done a little bit sooner than that and raise a bit more money for this very worthwhile campaign. So let's move to the panel, and the chair of the panel is our very own chair of the Brailleist Foundation, Dave Williams. Dave works at DOT as well, who is one of the campaign sponsors, and hosts the Raising the Dots podcast. Do give that a listen if you want to listen to podcasts about Braille. It's worth a listen. He's also a marathon runner. He is a parent, and he is a Braille user. So without further ado, Dave Williams, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Matthew. It is a huge honour to introduce our international panel of Braille leaders. Excuse me one moment.
All right, we appear to be having some technical problems with Dave there, but you are here listening to the launch of the Global Braille Campaign, the Global Braille Literacy Campaign, More Braille, More Empowerment, which is brought to you jointly by the International Council for the Education of People with Visual Impairment, ICEVI, and the World Blind Union, or WBU. We think we might have Dave back with us now. Hello, Dave.
Thank you very much, Matthew. It is a huge honour to introduce our panel of Braille leaders and Braille experts from around the world. The first panellist is no less than the president of the World Blind Union. A very warm welcome in to Santosh Kumar Rungta. Santosh, good morning. Okay, we'll return to SK in just a moment. Our second panelist is from South Africa, Pravina Sukraj Eli. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Good morning, Dave.
Pravina, while we work on SK's technicals, just tell us a little bit about yourself and your involvement with this campaign.
So I myself am a Braille user, and I am the treasurer at ICEVI. And I have the privilege of leading Focus Group 3 on the research element of the Braille campaign, where we're looking at providing an evidence base that will help us to propose recommendations going forward in terms of how policymakers and the various diverse circumstances in terms of how far we've come with Braille in its various facets, so that we can then move forward to try and ensure that we have more availability, access, and use of Braille across the globe.
Excellent. Thank you so much. SK, are you with us?
Yeah. Am I audible?
You are. Brilliant. Fantastic. So Santosh is the president of the World Blind Union, is a senior advocate at the Supreme Court and High Court in India, and is also the General Secretary of the National Federation of the Blind in India. Welcome, SK. It's a huge honor to have you with us today. If you would just remind everyone a little bit about the role of the World Blind Union.
We in World Blind Union have always proactively played an important role in promoting inclusion, and in doing so, we have always impressed upon the member governments and international agencies, including UN agencies, on the development, promotion, and preservation of Braille as a means, as the primary means of communication and literacy. So in terms of our vision and commitment to the promotion of Braille as a means of literacy and a necessary tool for actual inclusion in education for blind and deafblind people, we are committed to take this campaign forward and contribute to the maximum extent possible for the success of this campaign. We have also today in hybrid mode had a similar launch of this campaign, where about 500 blind were physically present, followed by many of you joining virtually. Thank you very much.
Judy Dixon is the president of the International Council on English Braille. Judy is retired from a career at the National Library Service for Blind and Print Disabled, and of the Library of Congress in the United States, and Judy herself describes herself as a lifelong Braille reader. Welcome in, Judy. Very briefly, can you just outline the work of the International Council of English Braille?
Thanks very much, Dave. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. The ICEB, the International Council on English Braille, is delighted to be part of this effort. We are playing a supporting role. Many individuals from ICEB are serving on the various working groups of this global campaign, and we're happy to provide the expertise and information that we have. We are primarily involved with UEB, developing, maintaining, promoting UEB, and Braille in general. Thank you.
Nicholas Hoekstra is a researcher and project manager with a special focus on the promotion of inclusive education. Nicholas works with the Accessible Books Consortium and has worked on inclusive education projects in 30 countries. Welcome in, Nick. Just tell us a little bit, if you would, about the work of the Accessible Books Consortium.
Sure. Well, thank you so much. Good morning and evening and afternoon to everyone. Very much a pleasure to be here. So yeah, the Accessible Books Consortium is a project of the World Intellectual Property Organization. Our mission is to help implement the Marrakesh VIP Treaty at a practical level. And we do that through two methods. On one hand, and this is where my work is specifically, is we help provide training and technical assistance to organizations primarily for the blind or visually impaired around the world in how to produce materials in accessible formats. And obviously that includes oftentimes production of Braille materials. Also, in parallel to that, the Accessible Books Consortium hosts the Global Book Service, which is an international platform for the exchange of books and educational materials in accessible formats between countries that have ratified or implemented the provisions of the Marrakesh VIP Treaty. And really, our goal is to be able to put literacy in the hands of blind and visually impaired individuals around the world, helping, as many of us know, the difficulties in producing materials that are accessible can be costly, time-consuming, and what we really hope to achieve with the Global Book Service is that if material has already been produced in one country, there's no reason to duplicate efforts. We want individuals from another part of the world to be able to download that material and save themselves the time and effort of having to reproduce it from scratch. So that is what we're working on at the Accessible Books Consortium. And yeah, thank you so much.
Rainer Delgado, our final panelist, works at the German Federation of the Blind and Partially Sighted. Rainer coordinates the European Blind Union Braille Working Group, who launched and manage the livingbraille.eu forum. And throughout 2025, livingbraille.eu published a piece of Braille-related content each and every day to celebrate Braille 200. Welcome in, Rainer. Just talk very briefly, if you would, about the Braille Working Group of the European Blind Union.
Hi, Dave. Good morning. Good morning from Berlin. This is morning here. Yeah, we are working for some years in this group. Some countries from Europe are represented by Braille users, and we made some projects so far. And the biggest is what you already mentioned, this web forum where everyone can publish things about Braille use, Braille teaching, about Braille devices, and so on. And our campaign where we really every day posted and published something about the use of Braille. And in other circumstances, we work on informing people about the use of Braille displays. We try to influence political decisions on European level, and to coordinate the work of EBU in the field of Braille. And it makes a lot of fun with my colleagues.
Fantastic. So this is our panel, as I'm sure you will agree, 5 incredibly experienced Braille leaders who are active at an international level. SK, I'm going to come to you first. As we've heard, many people around the world have been celebrating 200 years of Braille over the last year. What role does this new campaign play in taking this momentum forward?
Of celebration of 200th anniversary of Braille invention in 3 ways. One, through our advocacy initiatives, as Francis has pointed out, one of the focal areas of advocacy is to promote development of Braille and its inclusion as a means of literacy in the inclusive education setting. So on the policy front, we should campaign and should be able to succeed when we demand from our governments and also some seal of approval from UN agencies to make learning by blind and deafblind children through Braille, at least at the elementary stage of education, in the inclusive settings. And we should then also be supported by affordable availability of Braille material and devices required for writing and developing skills of reading and writing in Braille, coupled with digital Braille. The second area where probably through our international cooperation and alliances, which we can promote to make the digital refreshable Braille devices at affordable cost available in the developing countries and least developed countries through our partnerships with the manufacturers and also the governments and other donor agencies and partners. The third area, of course, the research area is also very important, where standardization of Braille is necessary. And in order to do that, we must focus on the establishment of national Braille authorities in the countries where there are none. And I believe that many countries, particularly in developing countries, do not have a national Braille authority, and the convergence of national Braille authorities in order to take the good work done by ABC, Accessible Book Consortium, to translate the objective of Marrakesh Treaty and their work into a reality by forging partnerships for making the books available in accessible format and reading material available in accessible format in all countries across the globe. So this I believe should be our focus and should be our expectation from this campaign.
Nick, why do you think it is that early access to Braille is so important for children who are blind or have low vision?
Yeah, so let's look at this first in a very pragmatic lens, is that research has demonstrated that early access to Braille for children who are blind or partially sighted leads to higher academic outcomes. Over the course of the life, research has demonstrated that Braille readers tend to be employed at higher rates and earning higher wages than non-Braille readers. There has also been studies that have found that the employers of individuals who read Braille report that their employees are oftentimes better at problem solving or are more confident, have their own personal strategies for overcoming problems. So there's a lot of kind of evidence out there that does demonstrate the benefits of Braille. But now let's speak at more of a practical level. Early access to Braille really provides the learning of literacy skills in all of the broad senses of literacy. We're talking learning how to spell. We're talking about learning punctuation and learning features of grammar that audio formats, for all their ease, just cannot produce. If you expect that a child will eventually learn to type on a computer, they need to know how to spell. And if you want them to be able to compose, a proper email, they need to know where to put a period and a comma. And these are skills that you learn by reviewing material hands-on, so to speak, with your fingers, reading Braille, learning how sentences are structured, etc. When we look beyond just literacy in terms of, the ability to read a page, when we look at literacy of other areas, mathematics, for example, or the STEM, the science, technology, engineering, and math areas, Braille is crucial for anyone who's ever tried to do mental math. It's one thing to be able to add 27 and 36 in your head. But as equations get larger, as math gets more complex, mental math starts to become next to impossible. And what Braille provides is the opportunity for a child or adult to look at the equation, to be able to think about it, to be able to take notes, to be able to really manipulate it without needing to hold it all in their head. And research has also found that, and this is kind of the area where I'm doing research right now for my doctoral degree, is that research has demonstrated that the areas of math and the areas of STEM, more broadly speaking, are where children and youth with visual impairments are most often excluded. So having access to Braille really is key for promoting literacy in all of the broad senses of the word.
Rainer, from your perspective, what do you think are the biggest barriers to Braille access?
Yeah, as Nick has explained, it's really obvious and no doubt that blind children and young people need Braille to be educated and to work. But in Europe, most people who get blind are old already. Elderly people are the majority of people who become blind. And I think we have so far not found out what is the message for those people concerning Braille. Why should they learn Braille, and how can we get them learning Braille? And what are the methods to teach them and the materials? And this is, I think, the biggest challenge in our times now to get Braille to every blind person, not only to children. So this is the first thing I would like to mention. And the second is we have not enough teachers, and not enough teachers for children, and also not for elderly people. And we have to work on this. And I think a big resource is the people who already use Braille as blind people. And we have to teach them to teach Braille to others, to children and also to adults. And I think we have to work a lot on these two topics. On others too, of course, but on these two most.
Judy, in your opinion, what informational resources do you think would make the biggest difference globally?
There are many valuable resources on Braille throughout the world, and I will cite a few, but these are English language resources. I'm not so familiar with resources available in languages other than English. But as far as a resource for UEB specifically, I think that UEB Online is one of the most helpful resources for people who wish to learn English Braille. It is administered by the Next Sense Institute that Francis is with in Australia. It is a self-paced, self-correcting. It's accessible for both blind and sighted people. It includes information about how to use UEB for math, both elementary and secondary levels, and has now developed a course for music Braille. It's particularly helpful for learning the UEB system. It's not designed for showing people how to teach Braille reading and writing, so to children. The American Printing House in the United States has stepped up its efforts to support Braille reading and writing instruction for children. First of all, they sell Building on Patterns, a complete curriculum for pre-kindergarten through second grade reading and writing using Braille, not materials for teaching the Braille code, but actually focuses on grade level standards for reading and writing. They also created the APH Hive, which contains free resources and courses for professionals and families about Braille literacy and other topics. Other free online resources from APH include their UEB math tutorial and an advanced math tutorial site. The Perkins School in the United States, they have a site called Paths to Literacy, features many articles, videos, and other downloadable resources for teachers and families related to Braille literacy. There's a lot of really great stuff on that site. And the PRCVI, Provincial Resource Center for the Visually Impaired, out of British Columbia in Canada, has a lot of fun resources for kids, families, and teachers. They're Braille bits, short videos that feature engaging activities for young children to build tactile skills. There are 2 seasons of these short videos, and they're a lot of fun, including things like making simple tactile maps with young children and short experience books in Braille, and just all kinds of practical information. Many of these videos feature blind adults talking to kids about how they do things. And this is great because so many blind kids just don't have much contact with blind adults. There's also resources for teachers of the visually impaired and transcribers on this site. It's important to remember that Braille is reading and writing. It's as much a code as print is. It's our native reading and writing system for people who are blind. The challenge is pairing the people who need these resources with the available resources.
Nick, what advocacy and/or media do you think could help change perceptions about Braille?
Yeah. This is a layered question, and I'm going to do my best to hit a couple different points. To begin with, we live in a world we live in a media landscape that is more and more characterized by algorithms and echo chambers that makes it very challenging for small communities such as ourselves to really get our messages communicated across these kind of algorithmic barriers. So one of our first challenges is to consider how we can spread advocacy to broader campaigns. And a way to do this is to link messages about Braille with other topics, with other topics that get better coverage, such as, for example, education, other large industries, employment, consumer products. So what I'm referring to is, for example, if I am a person who does a lot of baking and I have a social media account where I share, posts about the recipes that I'm most recently working on, if I'm somebody who, for example, has just used a refreshable Braille display to read a recipe, if I'm going to share in my own personal social media account, hey, I just prepared this recipe, tagging Braille with the, producer of the recipe or one of the products that went into my recipe starts to help spread Braille to another audience who may search out that product, but then also may see my posts where I talk about Braille. So we have to kind of work within that framework of the existing algorithms and the way kind of social media works to shuttle us through different topics. We just have to take advantage of that and try to, start linking Braille with some of those other areas that get better coverage. One of the things that I've learned through talking with friends and family is that people don't realize that people don't really understand Braille in the terms of the fact that Braille isn't readily available. I think many people just assume that blind people have access to Braille. And people also don't really understand the broad implications of how we use Braille. People think of Braille as simply books, whereas they don't realize how blind individuals may use Braille for labeling in their household, for public signage, for the many ways that we all can use Braille to support our daily lives. I think part of the advocacy that's necessary is helping to show how Braille is used and really communicate that message that Braille isn't as available as people might think. In doing this, we also want to reframe Braille from shift the framing away from an accommodation. Braille is not an accommodation. Braille is it's a core literacy skill. It's fundamental for literacy development. If we expect, and this is always kind of an argument that gets good traction, but if we expect blind people to participate in the economy, if we expect blind people to be employed, if we expect blind people to participate in education, Braille isn't just in addition, it's fundamentally necessary. It's going to help promote better access to employment, education, all of those things that we want our populations to be involved in. One of the things that I'm always been a big fan of kind of grassroots and local media. I think it's a lot easier for people to get their own messages picked up by local newspapers, local television broadcasts, local radios. Working on that local level sometimes can be a lot easier than trying to get a message into a broad national media. Not that that's impossible, and it's something that we should strive for, but I think working at that local level is oftentimes very important to get messages picked up. And that also helps your local community understand. People who might see you in the street or might know you or might know what you're referring to, might know the type of things that you're talking about because they live in your community. Those kind of local advocacy, I think, tend to be very powerful. And finally, when we're looking at more of that global level, I think it's very important to discuss some of the broader areas where Braille has already been picked up. And I'm thinking, for example, in countries that have already started to include Braille on packaging, labeling of medications, for example. That's huge. And that is something that it's important to share that globally. It's important to share that with other industries that haven't started to pick up on those things. But more than just sharing it, we need to share how it's done. We need to share resources on if another industry, if another country is interested in pursuing steps like this, how do you do it? What is the impact? What does it cost? How do you do it? How is it going to benefit your users? If we want Braille included, we really have to move beyond saying this matters and show this is how it's done. Yeah.
Pravina, how can research and data on Braille literacy, from early education to employment outcomes, influence national policies and investment in accessible education systems?
So currently what we found is that there has been some research done in certain countries. However, we don't have anything concrete in terms of global research that will help push forward the policy agenda internationally. And, the one thing that we've also found is that the world has evolved in the past 200 years. There's been various socio-economic, cultural, political changes that has happened over the years. And as Braille has also developed, so too has technology developed, and the way we access materials, the way we live our lives as people who are blind, and how we utilize Braille. Some of us still might use paper Braille in certain instances while we use electronic Braille displays in other instances, right down to using a dymo tape machine to label. So the research itself is actually to be able to, with these surveys, show what is the experience of the different countries across the world in the different regions. Do they actually have access to Braille? What is their experience? Are there any barriers? Are there any best practice and that actually exists within those particular countries? And then coming forward to say, how can we pull all of this together to be able to put forward a theory of change to help us put together a step-by-step guide on how to implement this throughout the world globally. And eventually, after this 2-year campaign, once we have the evidence that exists, we would be able to pinpoint and say we can see the gaps. For example, in a particular country, in a particular region, as we look at the answers that we receive from the different survey groups that will be answering these questions, that will then help us to guide and share. And as many of our panelists have spoken about partnerships and the fact that we have different age groups where we have education that we require Braille, what would we need to have access to Braille literacy? And then also as people get blind later on in life, how do we ensure that we use these recommendations that are in place and what is out there in other countries as the learning and best practice, so that eventually we have a knowledge hub, so to speak, where all of these resources can be accessed by all of us as our global village. And I think that is what the key thing for ICEVI and WBU is, to create this wide network of partners where we're not reinventing the wheel, but rather learning from each other, benefiting from each other. And the evidence that will come through from this research, we hope to utilize that to help guide how we move to the next century. For example, for example, how are we going to ensure that we have access to all of these devices that leads to the empowerment and autonomy of people with low vision, blindness, deaf blindness across the world, no matter where they live, but that they have access based on the evidence that we find. Thank you.
Thank you. SK, what message would you like to share with policymakers, educators, and decision makers listening today?
My message to the policymakers, that means the national governments, again to repeat, is that they should make it mandatory that the information in whatever form available, by whatever medium it is available, should be available in Braille, also left to the choice of the blind consumers, students, employees, homemakers, to choose the medium that they want. And they should not impose a particular medium, that is auditory medium, for us to access the information. Second, to the industry, to the manufacturers, I would urge that they should work together to reduce the costs by creating demand and also creating volumes to supply, so that the cost is reduced and it becomes affordable for all the blind around the globe. To the educators, I would strongly urge that they should not try to impose the particular medium of instructions, particular mode of instructions for the literacy of blind and deaf blind. And they should insist on using Braille as the medium of literacy to attain education and quality education. I would also urge policymakers to ensure that at least at the school level, the Braille books, assistive devices are provided free of cost to them, because they cannot afford the cost, at least in developing countries. And now, as the things are changing, even in developed countries, probably it would become a little difficult for the children there as well to afford the cost that is being charged for making Braille and assistive devices for use of Braille available to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final question, which is to all of you, and I will come to each of you one at a time, is simply this. What one change do you believe would make the biggest difference to Braille literacy worldwide? Let's go to Rainer.
In our days, it's the most important thing. Braille display for everyone.
Okay. Nick?
I'm going to go ahead and say, I think have every country having policy that mandates access to Braille for individuals as they lose their sight, whether they be children or adults. But let's just speak in my area, which is education. If every country had the policy that every educational material was mandated to be produced in Braille.
Judy?
I think Nick just said what I was going to say, because I think teaching and learning Braille is certainly the most important thing. And we need more teachers. We need for every country to have an aggregate of teachers knowledgeable in Braille and not use technology to cover up for the knowledge of teachers.
Pravina?
I would take it a step further than just policy. I would want there to be legislation that allows for enforceability and accountability of governments to ensure that all the articles within the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities can be upheld using Braille. We want all of us to have dignity, employment, education, and that in having this legislation in place, it will ensure that from early childhood right through to adulthood, lifelong learning, we have Braille available, accessible, affordable to all persons with low vision, blindness, and deafblindness across the world.
And finally, SK, what one thing do you think would make the biggest difference to Braille literacy globally?
Pardon me, could you repeat?
What one thing do you think would make the biggest difference to Braille literacy globally?
I think the biggest effort that probably would change and make a difference in promoting Braille literacy through Braille or Braille literacy should be on making the reading material in Braille available, accessible, and affordable.
Thank you to all our panelists, SK, Pravina, Judy, Nick, and Rainer. We appreciate all the work that all of you are doing through your organisations to bring Braille to as many people who need it as possible. I've been Dave Williams. It's been a huge honour to be with you this morning, and I'm going to hand you back to Matthew.
Thank you very much, Dave, and thank you from me to all of the panelists as well for a very engaging and lively session there. We are now coming up towards the end of our event. I would just like to reiterate my thanks at the start of this event to my two colleagues, Chantel Griffiths, who is from the Tactile and Technology Literacy Centre and is also a long-standing volunteer from the Braillists, and Stuart Lawler, who, in addition to his day job, is also the chair of the Irish National Braille and Alternative Formats Authority INBAF. So thank you, Chantel and Stuart, for your technical support there behind the scenes to keep this event running smoothly. Thank you to Francis Gentle and the rest of the campaign steering committee for allowing this launch event to go ahead and for being such a great support with it. And what happens now after this event has finished? Well, we have been recording it. The recording will be published in a few places. Most notably, it will be published on YouTube. So if you subscribe to ICEVI on YouTube or WBU on YouTube, do expect in the coming days that recording to be made available there. We at the Brailleist Foundation also have a podcast. It's called Braillecast. You can find it at braillecast.com. We will publish the audio of this presentation on the Braillecast podcast as well, so you can feel free to look for it there. If you've enjoyed this session and you would like to hear some more from the various partners and the various leads of the various steering groups and other people, there is a video montage available on YouTube, and that is actually, if you go to braillists.org, the very top news item actually at the moment is a link to that video montage. We'll also include that in our Braillists newsletter. I'm sure if you're subscribed for campaign updates, I'm sure a link will go out there in due course. But do have a watch of that. It's another 35 minutes worth of content to give you even more insight into what is going on at this Global Braille campaign. I mentioned campaign updates. Francis also mentioned this at the start of the session. If you go to ICEVI.org and look for the Global Braille Literacy Campaign, there is a link to sign up for campaign updates. These come up every so often, maybe once a month or so by email, and just keep you abreast of what is going on with the campaign and ways to get involved. And of course, you can light a candle for Louis Braille, and that is also available from the ICEVI website. Do that. Let's get as much money coming in for this campaign as we possibly can. It's been an absolute pleasure hosting this event for you today. If you'd like more information about the Braillists, as I say, braillists.org is where you can find us. If you'd like more information about the campaign, the best place to email is Braille Campaign. That's all one word, Braille Campaign at ICEVI.org. Braille Campaign at ICEVI.org. Please do that. We look forward to keeping in touch with you in the coming months and years as the campaign develops. We wish you once again a very happy New Year, a very happy World Braille Day. From myself, Matthew Horspool, and the rest of the team, let's raise a toast to more Braille, more empowerment. Bye for now.